Hello, welcome to The Balancing Act, the interview series that takes a behind the scenes look at the world of business, exploring how entrepreneurs, executives, leaders have succeeded, and more importantly, what they've learned along the way. I'm your host, Cary Shields. Today, we are joined by Renea Sagesar, I believe I'm
Sagesar.
correct,
Yeah,
founder and president of Associates in Pediatric Therapy. Renee, thank you for giving us some time today.
you're welcome. Excited to be here.
If you would, why don't you kick us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a speech therapist by trade and own a company called Associates in Pediatric Therapy where we help kids with special needs. We do occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, audiology, and then behavior. But my story didn't start by just being a speech therapist. I actually was a child that couldn't speak myself. So I was in therapy from the time I was 3 up until I was in 5th grade. You couldn't understand sometimes when I talked, and sometimes I still spit or say things really fast. So if I do that today, just ignore me. But that's what makes me me, right?
Yeah.
And so I was in therapy for a long time. And then in high school, my mom had a head injury and she had to learn how to talk and walk and do all those things again. So it was my senior year. And I became her caregiver because my dad was actually harvesting his crops. And it was during harvest time for my family. So he was working in the fields and I ended up taking my mom to therapy. And so that's where, it hit me that maybe my calling was bigger than just going to school to be a teacher, which was my original plan. So I changed that and became a therapist. Fast forward, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and with my first child, but I also have ADHD, which goes hand in hand with some of the therapy I probably had, and decided that I wanted to also continue my work helping kids, but also be a mom. And started seeing kids in our house for free because that's, as a therapist, we like to give
Right.
free services. And it
Right.
became something much more than that I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, that's sort of how I got started. I'm a mom of 5, so I've also had 5 kids along this journey,
Yeah.
and married to a wonderful man who brought me to Shelbyville, Kentucky, which is where it all started.
Awesome. And so I believe that the company was founded in 2007. So
Yes.
that period of, where you were the stay-home mom, but you were helping with other kids, was that, in that early 2000
Yes.
period? Yeah.
So I had our first child at 2000 in 2005
Hmm.
and stayed at home for a little while, and then started with early intervention, which is a program in our state to help kids. And where we go into the home and do therapy for the family so they don't have to leave. It's a great program. It's for 0 to 3, 0 to 3 years old. And so in our area at the time, there wasn't a lot of services once the child turned 3.
Hmm.
And that's where I would, I started bringing them into our house because I felt bad that the child would not get the service they need. And again, it was free because, I was just offering to give them some extra support. So they would stay and eat supper with us. And my husband came to me one night and he said, listen, I get it. You have a big heart for this, but these people cannot hang out with us all night long. So let's take this and actually do something with it. And so that's where it started. So it wasn't necessarily the thought of like, I'm going to be a business owner one day. Like
Right.
that wasn't the intention. It was truly finding an area that needed something
Mhm.
and seeing that, this might be bigger than what I was initially anticipating.
Awesome. I was going to ask what set it in motion. So it sounds like it was already in your head, but your husband, sort
Yeah.
of lit the fuse he could already see, and that kind of
Yeah.
set, yeah, very, very cool. Most companies, they spark from that, where you can identify a niche, a
That's right.
need that
Yep.
you understand how to fill, which is awesome.
Yep.
So, so would you say that's literally
That's,
that
yeah,
moment?
that really is what started it. I
Awesome.
remember going to our first location, which a lot of you guys probably listening to this that are thinking about that too. It's like, do I start, when you start at the house, it was free, right? I wasn't
Mhm.
paying rent. necessarily for the kids to come in like it was already part of our everyday life. But when you sit in front of a building that you're about to sign a contract on, that's when it gets serious. You're like, okay, this is going to cost money now. I've got to make money because it's costing money.
Yes.
And that's really when it started in 2007. The first time I signed that lease agreement that said, okay, this is a real job now. This is actually a business. And now we've got to figure out how to make this thing work. So that's where it started. And I was a speech, like I said, I'm a speech therapist. One of our first patients needed occupational therapy. And I was like, okay, let's find an occupational therapist. And
Let's
then
figure it
the
out.
same patient needed physical therapy. I was like, okay, let me find a physical therapist. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
that's exactly how it started, with the need that wasn't being met in our community, and wanting to help the child succeed. Because when you see these kids, you'll do whatever you can to make it work.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's
Mhm.
fun. I actually know, I have a friend started his company, and he talked about that same experience of, you know, I'm going to take a building, so now it's going to cost money, and he came up with, you said it, this has to work, and he made an acronym, the THTW, and he has the THTW framed and all over the inside of the building, so that at least he forgets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
and
right.
yeah, that's really good. And I'd asked him, I was like, so, because he has a full company, so he went through the period of, or the process of saying, all right, what is my vision, my mission, and all that, which, like you have on your website.
Mhm.
But he had this THTW framed up everywhere, and he had said that was for him. And I was like, so, is there any part of that flow through the team? Like, because he has a team of people now. He literally
Yeah.
has people that has to literally do the outreach as well as anything else. And
Yeah.
he said he thought so. I was like, so if I asked anybody on your team what the THTW stands for, if I just walked out and asked anybody, would they know what it means? Like if you shared,
Yeah.
that part of yourself. So, do you feel that with you? Like you have so many locations. I mean, you're in Kentucky, you're down in Tennessee. I know Knoxville pretty well. So
Yeah.
West
Yeah.
Knoxville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indiana. Yeah.
Oh, yes, up in Indiana. So,
Mhm.
do you feel like, do can you speak to that process of
Yeah.
relaying that,
Yes.
that self-vulnerability through your team?
Yeah, that's always been important, because we always have wanted that feeling atmosphere at our
Yeah.
company too.
Mm.
And we have been named best places to work for the past 6 years in a row.
Yes.
And so one of the things we want to do is make sure that we're continuing to build that culture of like, this is who we are. And so most people, I am in a field where it is everybody wants to help, right? Because we didn't go to school. We went to school to be a helper, to help children.
Yeah.
And so that does help us a little have a unique selling feature of like, how do we, make work fun, is we get to help change children's lives every day. And so to me, that is something we carry through all of our clinics. But you're not a therapist if you don't want to help, like a pediatric therapist if you don't want to help a child either.
Right.
You don't get into this field to make lots of money,
Money.
because you can go somewhere else and make that.
Yeah.
So this field is truly for passionate people who want to help see the lives of children change. So that does help make my job a little easier selling that, because that's what we do anyways.
Yeah.
But our mission is to really try to help as many children as possible.
Yeah. And I
That's why
love,
we've grown.
yeah, that I can't remember how you say it, but basically, getting them to the next.
Yep, therapeutic
No,
level. Yep. So
yes.
where a
I never even
child,
thought of that till I read it on your website.
yeah, and so every kid's going to
Yeah.
advance differently, right?
Yes.
Not every child's going to be valedictorian, but every child can succeed, and every child can make goals that they think are important in their life. And so we really start with the
Hmm.
family and the child. Like, what does the kid want? Does the kid want
Yeah.
to learn how to ride a bike? is that the child's goal? And if that's the goal, then that's what we want them to succeed at. They might
Yeah.
not be able to ever run a marathon, but what do they want to be able to do? Maybe it's a mile they want to be able to walk. So that's how we start with what the child wants and what the
Yeah.
family wants and try to meet them at that level.
That's beautiful. That's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah,
So,
that's how we grew organically for several years. Is we actually would have patients come to our office in Shelbyville from Lexington and Louisville. And so what happened was we found like, okay, well, maybe there's a need in Lexington and Louisville. And so we grew organically out of people coming to us.
mhm.
And again, that the whole thing started very organically and just kept growing because there was a need, and there still is a need. Unfortunately, we have
Yeah.
several thousands of children waiting for services, and it's very sad.
Man, that's incredible. So, not to fully switch gears, because again, my focus is to like get your story out, to hear the story
Yeah.
of all the things you've got going on. But you mentioned your father was, I guess, in farming, and that
Mhm.
brings up
Yeah.
you have a new book,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Thank you.
Harvesting Success.
Harvesting success, yes.
Um,
So it's basically about how, I get asked all the time, like, Renee, you went to school to be a therapist. You don't have an MBA in business. So how do you even operate your business? How do you do this? How has it been successful? So one piece of that is I grew up on a farm. And I think back through, like, if you know of any farmers, they are
mhm,
the most hardworking, ethical people. Grit, they have a lot of grit. And if you run a business, you got to have a lot of grit and work ethic, right? And
mhm.
so in one of my CEO meetings, literally one of the guys across the table was like, how have you been successful? There's not many women out there, first off, but then
Mhm.
to scale how you've scaled without any financial backing initially, how have you done it? And I
Yeah.
said, I think that it goes back to being raised on a farm and learning those values of, penny pinching and harvesting, and, you reap what you sow, and like putting the work and the time. And sometimes you have to get up at 5 a.m. and you don't go to bed till 1 o'clock the next morning, or you work around the clock. And
Yeah.
so all those
Yeah.
things, learning, being raised on a farm really is what taught me how to run a business, if that makes sense. And so that's why it's so
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
And so we call it harvesting success because I do believe that anybody can learn these principles, but not everybody grows up on a farm anymore.
Mhm.
And that's where I was like, okay, I want to get out this farming model of what it meant to me, and how can I help other business owners and leaders learn what I learned way back.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I ordered your book yesterday. I can't
Oh,
say in this interview that I've already read your book, but I'm going to read it. The reviews of the book were very good, so I look forward to
yeah.
reading it. To
Thank you.
that point of back to your point of, there's not a lot of people who are raised on a farm and watch, they have that experience. I think I wanted to touch on that because again, this podcast is called The Balancing Act. And the balance, what it, I first started the tendency for it was to how to keep that business running or start that business while not losing yourself and your personal life in it. And farming is a great example. And I think um, to me, the reason it's a great example is because the farm, the business is the farm, and the farm is also the home. And so, literally, the home, the whole family feels the urgency of the business.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
ever, it's ever a part of you.
Yeah.
And I think um, everyone, the rest of us outside of that, I think that's an experience that we've missed out. We've missed out on. It's a different experience, and I think your book is going to do very well because I think it touches on something that has that is missed out by a lot of
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Well, and I even talk about, like, if you think back to the beginning of time, one of the oldest professions is farming. and then also joke and prostitution. But we're going to talk about farming. But one of the oldest, yeah, professions, back in the beginning of time and in the Bible, it talks about like some of those foundations. And our generation, we're losing those farmers, right? And it is hard, and we're losing some of those foundational principles that really, I think, have built America. And so that's where, again, I hope that this resonates with a lot of different individuals, or especially somebody who maybe didn't grow up on a farm, to see how this can relate to their business and apply it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally think that's it. And I think grit is absolutely part of being a business owner.
Yeah.
And someone that's wanting to start a business, anyone that, is still sitting on the fence, nervous to begin, when someone asks, I just tell them to hold on to the passion. Like if you feel it, then you should start it.
Yes.
Then it's, the grit comes in. So I wanted, in addition to grit, I wanted to ask, what are the ingredients of a successful business?
Yeah. I think faith too, right? You have to have faith.
Yeah.
And to me, that you're making a difference, and what you're doing is making an impact on the better good of the world. And so you know, one of my chapters is called "I Help Make Your Underwear." And the reason that, yeah, it's sort of funny, right? My dad tells everybody, if you say, "Hey, my name's so and so, what do you do?" And he says, "I make your underwear." And I'm like, Dad, and it always used to embarrass me, but now it brings me so much joy because it's funny, because
Right.
he is a cotton farmer.
That's,
And
yeah.
so he truly loves to tell everybody. And because it starts a question like, what do you do? Like, that's hilarious. Yeah, he's funny. And I'm like, you know what? That's his purpose. And he loves to say he feeds America. And so his
Yeah.
purpose is helping to make your underwear and feeding the world. And I
Yes.
think that's great because, well, my purpose is to help children learn how to talk, learn how to walk, learn how
Mhm.
to be their best version. Your
Yes.
purpose is to help somebody learn how to run a business, and think about all the great things you can do out here, helping individuals learn how to succeed. So we all have a purpose, and that is definitely one of those major ingredients. Why are you opening a business? What is your purpose? And you have
Yeah.
to know that purpose, and you have to believe in that purpose and have faith that you are making that difference. So again, that's called I Help Make Your Underwear chapter, aka purpose. So
That is a
yeah,
great, great explanation. I often, when working with teams, I try to help people in teams understand how their purpose is it true their job.
yep,
You call it the purpose instead, because the job has a purpose, right?
yep,
Every job
yeah,
does, even if they
yeah,
are the janitor, right? And that's
yep,
always like the low go to, but it's such a great example. Even they
yep,
have a purpose because that serves the purpose of the whole.
yep.
Without them, the rest would not remain. It's
That's
just
right.
a fact. And
That's right.
so getting that purpose into staff is,
Yeah. And another one is values. Like, there's a chapter about values, and I talk about that like in our company. When we are to be successful, you have to know your values, and you have to agree upon your values with your team. Like, as an owner, I may say these are my values, but if my lead team does not believe or agree with those values, it's never going to work. And it's
yes,
not something you can set one day. You have to set it as I'm a big believer in team building. You have to set it as a team, and you have to agree that sometimes as leaders, we think our ideas are the best, and they're not. Like,
yeah,
we always there, I mean, we're human. So there's going to be some cockiness to being the leader and the boss sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
And I would like to say I'm never in that point of, but sometimes I'm like, my idea is the best, but it's not. And I have to listen to my team. And so, I think that's important in running a successful business. If you're a one-man shop, you need a mentor, you need a coach, you need somebody to throw some ideas off of, because your ideas are not always the
right.
best idea. And so that's
It's
something I've had
yeah,
to learn.
yes, it is hard to find the comfort of knowing that um, the input
Hmm.
from the staff is not literally going to put the entire boat off course.
That's
You
right.
know, the input's not going to ruin the harvest because the sowing happened so long
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And you definitely have to listen. So I think the values is important
mhm,
piece. So you have the grit, you have your purpose, you have your values.
mhm,
Those are so important in having the successful ingredients for your company. And our values, when we interview and hire,
mhm.
one of the chapters is called Chop the Weeds. And it's like, if you, and we've done this, I'm going to say, I'm going to confess, we've hired somebody that hasn't had all of our values. And then they become this like bad weed within your company and they can suffocate the whole thing and
Mhm.
kill your whole crop if you're
Yes,
not careful, right?
yeah,
And
yes,
so
yeah.
that is important. You have to know your values and you have to stick to them.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to say we've always been perfect because we have not, but I definitely talk about some of those stories of like, oh my goodness, we've all had that weed in our company, and you got to get them out.
Mhm.
You got to chop them and get them out.
Get them out. Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. That's
yeah. So
that's
I love
absolutely.
using analogies, as you'll learn with me, but it helps me in therapy. We use them with kids. We use
Mhm.
analogies with kids to help them learn, and I think in
Mhm.
business you need analogies also to make it stick and resonate.
Very cool. Yeah. So, looking to the future, and in your company, what what does associates in pediatric therapy, what does it need to adopt for the future, and what must it not lose,
That's
or
right.
just either one?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can lose our number one selling point, which is we guarantee we're the most flexible company you can ever work for. As a mom, I've always said faith, family, and then work. So we have to have our values in line to be
Yeah.
successful. And faith, family, and then work is how we run our business. And so, family comes first. And so, I'm a mom of five, and today when I get off this podcast with you, I have to take one to orthodontist and a doctor's appointment during my lunch break. But it's important for me that I'm still a part of that too. And I have, like I said, an amazing husband who also, family comes first for him. And we have to stay true to that. So that is something that we don't want to lose. No matter how
Yeah.
big we get, how many employees we hire, we want every employee to feel that. And if
Yes.
they don't, then we've gotten too big or something has broken. So we want
Yes.
everybody to feel like those values can always stay true to them. The second piece is we want to continue to grow and support as many kids. And if we get to a point where we feel like there's no more kids to support, then
Mhm.
I guess at that point we would probably slow her down. But right now, if I tell you, it's heartbreaking. We have over 5,000 children waiting for our therapy. I just
Mhm.
cannot hire the therapist fast enough. Um,
Wow.
and and that's the hard part is finding therapists to be able to keep up with the demand because unfortunately in our field, pediatric therapy pays less than like your hospital setting or your nursing
Sure.
home setting.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for us to be competitive and keep up with the demand of what our services need.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like you're nonprofit and
No.
the kids coming out of college with, I guess, a degree for therapy.
Yes, and most of them now for therapy have to have a master's or a doctorate. So they're coming out
Yeah.
with hundreds of $1,000s in, in debt from day
That's
one. And so they have to jump in a field that sometimes pays them more. And we're also losing for therapists in our field to other totally like they went to school to be a therapist, but they can't even afford to be a therapist because of the pay. So they're going in other directions in their field, and
Mhm.
not pursuing therapy. So I'm really advocating right now at the Capitol and in Tennessee and in Kentucky
Mhm.
and Indiana to try to get increases so that we could be more competitive. Because I am a big believer, if we don't help our children, what is our future?
Right. Right, right, right. Totally. So yeah, it probably is. I just imagine all the places where um, someone would turn for assistance in paying for the service, because otherwise it falls back into their lap to balance keeping a home together, keeping everything going, but this one child that just needs a lot more,
Yeah.
assistance than the rest. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had one family member, a cousin, and it was, I don't know how they pulled it off. I mean, as a family, I'd say they did it through faith and family, you know,
Yeah.
using
Yeah.
your, yeah. So yeah, that's amazing, and yeah, great job, Bonnie. So, in terms of balance, again, like you're very, the way you speak to it is very balanced, and I like the principles, the faith, family, and work. Those, that
Mhm.
order is. Would you say that principle has helped you maintain balance? It's not like every day is like perfect, but overall, is that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, definitely. And
yeah,
far between perfect, right? But like I said, it's also like our family, my husband has been a very big part of growing APT, and so the support there has also helped us, me personally, to stay balanced, to be able to grow. He's been my rock and support in all of this too. So I think you have to have that in a business. You have to have a partner who supports you.
mhm,
It's hard, you have to go home and be able to talk about it,
yes,
to not, or have a mentor. If you don't have a partner, you have to have a mentor or coach, right?
hmm,
That's where you come in, because you
yeah,
have to have somebody that you can throw ideas to that are not your employee. And you
yes,
have to have somebody you can complain to, because not every day is perfect. But that is the balance. Like, you have to be able to mentally balance it too. um, One of the things we started here for our employees in Shelbyville was I started a daycare so that I could still feel, just for my employees, so I could bring my kid to work with me, right? And feel like I could be a mom, but also and that's for women. It's so
yeah,
hard.
very smart.
Yeah, as women and mothers, we want to be the home caretaker. We want to be the provider. We want to, and it's hard for women to sometimes feel like they can have it all. So that's where I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. And I've just tried to balance it. And like I said, I'm not perfect at all in that, but try every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Renee, this has been wonderful. I can't thank you enough for giving us some time, sharing your story. I think anyone listening to this will, especially like my daughters, I hope they'll watch this and learn from you. Because it's a challenging world, but that's the exciting part. It's a
Yeah.
challenging world. So
Yeah.
good on you to have just been someone to just have that, ambition to see a need, fill a need, and then, keep building from what you see. Like, I want my child around me, so let's create daycare. Just that constant. Here's a challenge. Let's imagine something and make it happen.
Yeah.
And so good on you.
Yeah, and I
Thank you
always joke.
for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I will say, I always joke and say sometimes we should be a nonprofit in the field that we're in, but the only reason I'm not is because I want to make those decisions. I want to be able to pull the trigger if I see a need, and I
Yeah.
didn't want a board to tell me I could yes or no. So that is the exact reason that I decided not to go not for profit. I was like, they would fire me day one probably.
Yeah.
I would start it and they would kick me off.
Yeah, that's a different world
It is.
altogether.
It is.
So, but yeah, I'm glad you're for profit, because I,
Thank you.
I think that in today's America, maybe in today's world, it often feels to me like that there is, if it's nonprofit, it's doing a social good. And I think,
Mhm.
well, there is for profit that does social good.
That's
And all
right.
the responsibility falls on the individual or the team, if there's like a handful of owners, all that responsibility falls on them. And
Yep.
and they get up and make themselves do it again tomorrow.
That's
Your
right.
tax dollars don't have to pay for them to do it. They figure it
Yeah.
out. And I
That
just,
is
yeah,
that could be a whole podcast in itself,
yes.
because I also believe, like I said, I'm very faith-based, but I believe that we should be good stewards of what we've been given. And
Yeah.
I want to donate to something that I know, and I want
Mhm.
to tithe to something that I know is bringing value. And I tithe to a lot of our nonprofits that we partner with. But But something that sort of has always bothered me is the nonprofits that are in similar business to what I do. And when they
Ah,
get a
yes.
lot of and when they get a lot of money and they're still struggling and wanting donations, something on their end is broken
Yes.
and
Yeah.
something isn't working, whether they're not billing appropriately, there's something that might be broken. Because if I'm being successful without getting millions of dollars in grants, where is that going? And are they being good stewards of their money? And so
Yes.
I've always struggled with that because, people are like, well, Renee, you should just go be a nonprofit. You can pay us more. And I'm like, that's not how this works. And that's not what that money is for.
Right.
So,
Right.
so yeah, like I said, that's a whole nother podcast in
It
itself.
is a whole other podcast, and thank you for sharing that because
Yeah.
I feel the same way. When I get to speak to individuals, that they lean in that way or they share that kind of emotion. I try to talk about. Have you ever heard of, so you'll be another one of the companies that I refer to now that have you ever,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that I can say, well, they're for profit. So
Yeah.
they take all that on themselves. And believe it or not, the federal government thinks that
Yeah.
because that's what America was founded on.
Yeah.
It wants us to go out and start companies. So anyone that talks to me about like, oh, I've always wanted to start something, I'm like, America wishes you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So
That's what keeps us going and makes us great.
that's right. Well, Renee, if someone would really like to get in touch with you, or, just to learn more about you or the company, how would you prefer that they go about?
Yeah, they are more than welcome to email me.
Okay.
So they can email me. It's just Renee, Renea at kidtherapy.org.
Okay.
Visit our website. I'm also on LinkedIn and, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook or all those things.
Yeah. Renee and I are now connected. So if
Yeah.
if you're connected with me, you can find Renee through there. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Renee, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on here today.
You're welcome. And to the viewers and listeners, this wraps up another episode of The Balancing Act. I hope you found it to be enjoyable and valuable. My name is Cary Shields, and until next time, remain in balance.